Hi all, and welcome back. A bit of change of pace for me this week. I'll take you through a behind-the-scenes look at the Colorado Model Railroad Museum in Greeley, Colorado. I had the pleasure of interviewing the delightful and passionate Michelle Kempema, the boss of this awesome operation. Just listening to Michelle, you'll be inspired to create and learn about our great hobby. In part 1, we'll look at the museum's history and attractions, and in part 2, Michelle takes us for a virtual tour of the layout and its operations. Hi, I'm Darren from Model Railroad Techniques. Our YouTube channel produces model railroad videos for the modeler. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Michelle Kempema from the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. So thank you very much for coming along this evening and chatting to me and taking time away from your family and friends to come and chat with some random Australian. So thank you again.
You're very welcome. This will be fun.
Let's meet Michelle. I've heard a lot about Michelle on various other podcasts. Lionel Trains, I think you were on. You did Let's Meet with Ken Patterson, I think was when I first came across you and fell in love with the model railroad effectively. So you're executive director of the Model Railroad Museum, is that correct?
That's correct.
What job, What does that entail?
Well, I should probably give you a little history. When Dave built this place, it was all volunteer run, and I was a volunteer who came in the door for a fundraiser for the nonprofit that I worked at the time. And my daughter, who was like 7 at the time, she disappeared into the layout, and she comes back like an hour later. And she goes, "Mom, this is the coolest place I've ever been. Could we volunteer here?" And at the time, I was a single mom going to college full-time, working full-time, and momming full-time. So this was a place we came to find peace and joy. And so we volunteered here twice a month. And then after about a year, Dave came to me and he said, I really think people might like this place. It could be a tourist attraction. So would you be interested in being the executive director and seeing if we could give it a go? And so I accepted, and here I am almost 10 years later, 10 years since I started volunteering, 9 years as an employee. So first I had to create the nonprofit, and then we had to figure out how we fit in the tourism world. And then we had to let people know we were here. So I was the only employee for 2.5 years. So I really kind of wear every hat. But now we have a staff of 5 ladies. We've split the job out. As we've grown, and we've grown kind of exponentially over the years. So I love my job. It's super fun. So. As you know,
I've got a young daughter as well, and she's been watching some of your little videos on Facebook, and she will take your job, she said at some stage. So she was quite pumped.
Perfect. I'll need a replacement when I retire.
Mum and Dad have already worked out how we can live between Australia and Colorado, so we're on board. So
okay. It's a plan then. I'm good.
Maybe house swap. You come to Australia and we'll come to the US. So, you touch on the tourism aspect of this. Now, you're on the board of tourism for Colorado. Is that correct?
Yeah, for group and package travel, I'm on the board of what's called Tour Colorado, and we work with like group travel, especially international group travel. And it's been really fun. It really kind of opened my eyes to what it takes to be a tourist and how we can better serve our tourists that come, especially from other countries, and those from the U.S. too. There's a lot of domestic travel too. So it's fun. I really enjoy the tourism world. I love people. And so I think really if I were to describe my job in one sentence, it would be translating model railroading to non-model railroading people and having them fall in love with it.
That's very interesting you bring that up, because in Australia, obviously, we're a lot smaller population here, for starters, with 25 million people, but a museum like this in our part of the world just doesn't exist because we don't have the population. So I think it's quite interesting. We'll talk about that in a sec, some of the youth programs you got, because I'm a strong believer this is with any niche, any hobby, any sport, it's the youth that we need to nurture, because they're our next model railroaders, our next executive directors of the museum, as we've just spoken about. So
yeah,
we've talked about the tourism. Now you're also the owner of Craftworks. What does that entail?
Colorado Craftworks. That's been my my little side home business for like 30 years, something I do with my mom. I'm a crafter and an artist. And so it's been interesting because lately I've been trying to translate my crafting skills and supplies and things that I have into modeling and how they work. And so I've been asking a lot of questions of people like, I have this product, what can I do with it? Can I weather with it? Or how can I use it in modeling? So that's been kind of fun to translate my two worlds together into one for the first time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Are you a model railroader, so to speak, or you've turned into a model railroader?
I've been a rail fan forever, my whole life, a rail fan. Modeling it's kind of new and kind of not new. When I was in college, actually had an N-scale layout, but didn't really understand it. It was just a track and a pretty little train that I bought because it was green. Kind of thing. And so now understanding more prototypical modeling has really kind of changed my thoughts on modeling. I'm definitely a scenery person. I don't like the straight lines as much as I like the hills and the animals and things like that. So I'm known for painting those cows. I paint longhorns.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. So, all right, we'll get into the history and now the attractions of this fantastic museum. So, Dave Tressel, the founding gentleman, can we talk about who is this man?
Yeah. Dave is an amazing person. And when I met Dave and his wife, Mickey, it was here at the museum. And Dave, he was driven his whole life to build the ultimate model railroad. He had Len Westcott's book, 101 Track Plans. And there's a page in there that says, if I had $1 million, I could build the ultimate model railroad. So he kind of worked his whole life towards this goal of building the ultimate model railroad. And he built a lot of modulars. He had the Denver, Greeley, and Tahoe modular layout, and he won the NMRAs. And I think it was 2001. I'm not exactly sure on that year. And they said, Dave, you can't compete anymore. And so he got bored and built this. It's interesting because if you do travel through this region, a lot of our volunteers are from Cheyenne, and the Sherman Hill Model Railroad Club actually acquired that traveling layout, and they have it set up in the Cheyenne Mall. Right. So it's kind of cool. You can go see our history just an hour to the north of here. So
I've been doing a little bit of research on Cheyenne after you and our conversation the other day, and we will be going there.
Yeah. Today actually is, it's May. The month of May is always going to be important because of the big boy and everything that happened with Cheyenne Steam. So every year in May, I'll be like, woo, yippee. You'd love the steam.
Did you say yippee or UP?
I know they went really well together. I tried to say UP, but it kind of sounded like yippee. I guess it goes either way.
I like that. Okay. So for someone that's never been to the museum like myself, what attractions can you offer?
Well, back to Dave Tressel, he was really the master of scenery. This is a scenic railroad. And Dave traveled the world and visited every layout and museum about modeling that he could find. And he made lists of things he didn't like and things that he did like. And so when you come here, the experience is meant to really immerse you in a miniature world. Sure. So our main attraction is, of course, the Oregon, California, and Eastern layout. And we get asked often, why is it an Oregon layout in Colorado? Well, that's Dave. Yeah. He was a newspaper publisher, and his very first newspaper was in Lakeview, Oregon. And you'll find it right in the front of the museum where you come in. And we actually have his newspaper in that town. So this is based on a railroad that he watched for about a decade while he ran that newspaper. Sure. At the end of his career, he had 26 publications, and one of them was the Greeley Tribune. And that's how he came to Greeley at the end of his career and retired here and built this here. So we're just fortunate. So the layout is 5,500 square feet of layout in a 10,000 square foot building.
Wow. I've got a track diagram up on the screen as we see.
Yeah. And something you should notice that's really different about us from other places is the width of the aisles. Look how wide they are. They're meant to have volunteers taking their trains mixed with the public who can stand right next to them and talk to them and ask them questions while they're operating. And so it really is an interactive experience to visit here, especially for non-modelers, because they really can ask those questions like, what are you doing? What is the NCE controller in your hand? What is that? So it's kind of neat. Our plexiglass, which I'll show you in a little bit, is about 8 inches high.
Yep.
So you can lean over our layout. You can look at it and really be a part of it.
Lovely. Okay. So
it's it's logging. So we log on the top of the mountain. We have 2 different sawmills. Yep. Then it goes over to the backside of Klamath Falls where the Weyerhaeuser yards are, and then we redistribute it. And we export some lumber and then deliver some lumber to industries. So, and then we import liquids that would go to different industries. So trains have jobs here. There's a lot going on.
Oh, I run my railway the same. I'm not really into trains just driving around aimlessly. They need to have a purpose and shunt them and go from points A to B. So to give people an idea how large this layout is in scale, so if we're going to start a train, say, it doesn't matter really, just in the major staging.
At the bottom of the screen where you're looking at it, the main staging is underneath the mezzanine where people walk. So it's kind of like the cave underneath there. And if you were to leave out of the Lakeview side towards the Fairport staging into Lakeview, Nasty Flats into Lakeview, when your train leaves there, if it's doing an average of about scale 12 to 14 speed on a 26 scale, I think it's going to take you an hour to get all the way back around and park again, if you don't get put on a siding waiting for someone else. So you probably should have bought cookies for the dispatcher. So
we've got a picture of the staging up on there now. So with that gentleman cleaning locomotive wheels, which I'm sure is a laborious task.
Yes, we have an amazing group of volunteers that come in on Monday. And what they do is they maintain this layout. And it takes one day a week just to get through a portion of the trains every week, clean the track every week, just maintain the layout. It's a huge undertaking. Just keeping a layout this large clean takes constant vigilance.
Yeah, I can only about imagine.
So
the other things, I know it's not Christmas time, but a few photos I came across, you've got obviously other dioramas or attractions. Yeah. So right now we've got the Christmas scenes up that are just gorgeous. So are they up all through the year as well? Or?
Okay, so that is Department 56. And this came to us 2 years ago. A couple from Lincoln, Nebraska came to the museum and said, we think we have a collection that would really fit with a model railroad museum, and we like what you do here, and so we'd like to be a part of it. And Department 56 is a brand of porcelain Christmas villages, like houses. And Mr. Harris had collected them his whole life. And so they donated to us every piece ever made, which is over 1,500 houses and 5,000 people and thousands of accessories. And we have it stored in our warehouse in 3 shipping containers. So we're space limited. That would be part of our expansion. It'll be about a 3,000 square foot layout to put it all out. So it's part of our expansion plan. But right now what we have is truly a 5 by 10 foot layout where I change it once a year. And it's the layout that I built. And it's a Christmas scene. So this year it's actually North Pole. It's full of little elves. I did Christmas in the City last year, which is those New York scenes like you were looking at. And then next year, I don't know which village I'll pick because there's different villages within the whole collection. So different themes. But, a lot of people are like, how does that work with HO scale modeling? But, when you look at it, it's diversity in modeling. It's women who model, more women than men model with that. There's a train in it. There's houses, there's people. It's building a miniature world, which is exactly what HO scale prototypical model railroading is.
That's exactly right. So I think it's just, they're beautiful models. They really are.
It's really beautiful in person. I can't wait to someday when we expand, build that layout. And then we'll have all of it out. There's like a Harry Potter village and there's all kinds of really cool things in there.
So
really
give us some sort of scale idea. How tall are the figurines?
They are O scale.
Okay, right.
I typically run an O scale in there. I have an HO scale in there this year, the Polar Express, because I wanted more curves in the track, and they're little elves, so they're much shorter. But typically I would have to run O scale in there. Okay. And 2-rail O scale actually looks the best.
There's a lot more detail you can give to that size layout as well. You just need twice the amount of space.
Yeah, exactly. Department 56 typically will be pretty condensed together. Sure. It's, and so it's really kind of it's meant to be a really dense kind of layout. So it's kind of fun because there's so much going on in it.
Sure. Just scrolling through the photos here.
Okay. Yeah, see, that's Christmas in the City Village. And it's got that, 1940s Art Deco, Santa Claus and Coca-Cola.
I just love the,
those.
all the little, the dioramas of vignettes, with the,
right
in the windows there.
See, and that particular one, that's a famous painting in that window. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a famous painting of a diner.
Oh, is that with all the
it
rock
might
stars?
Be in...
Is that photo?
Yeah.
I know the one you mean.
I think so.
It's got like Buddy Holly and some other American idols.
Yeah. And so they reproduced that as a building, and they do that a lot. They license things like that. So it's really fun to see the detail. Oh, that's
okay. So that's the next one, the caboose. So what affectionately known as the 10583, I think it is. So
that's how I say it.
I'll give you a little story. When we were last in the United States, we were in Arizona, a place called Williams, Arizona. And they got a Santa Fe one very similar to this that we stayed in for 2 nights. And that was one of the best places I think I stayed in. It was awesome. Then we went on the Grand Canyon Railway up from Williams and had a great time. So tell us about your old girl here.
Okay, this is Colorado and Southern 10583, and she was built on July 16th of 1919. She's beautiful. She was built with 6 in the build, and 3 still survive today of the 6. They were all designated for the beer run from the Coors plant in Golden to downtown Denver as their first jobs. Then this one migrated north and ran from Fort Collins to Greeley on the Colorado and Southern line. And at some point, and I don't know that I have the date that it was sold, it was retired and then sold, and a man in Loveland, which is about 15 miles from here, purchased it and put it on his farm. And they painted it burgundy to match their home.
Right.
But Dave somehow finagled it away when they were moving. He bought it and brought it back here and found the red color that it would have been underneath. He dug down through the paint, painted it back to its Burlington Root CNS colors, and restored it. The only thing we didn't actually restore to proper interior is that we didn't put a green interior in it. It's white because we used to have Santa in there, and the pictures were weird with that green.
So you use that for kids' parties and that type of thing, I'm assuming, inside, or no?
No, it's actually set up like it was when it was working. Okay. So it's got beds with quilts, and the desk is there for the conductor, and there's the stove. And we typically use it with children's programs. We'll go in there and do story time, or we'll talk about what it's like to be in a caboose. There's the last picture of it behind a steam locomotive going from Fort Collins to Greeley on the Great Western. So
that's a great
pretty
photo.
Cool. It's nice to have her back. She just turned 100 last year, and so we gave her new paint and carpet and showed her lots of love.
Gave her a facelift and did her nails.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
She's a sweet caboose.
It's sort of the romantic era, I think, of railroading with cabooses, isn't it? It seems to be, but obviously we've now gone away from that. But we've just got flashing lights on the back of ours here. That's about all we've got. So.
What's interesting though is I'll have 4th graders in here, and all the kids will be sitting on the floor, and I'll say, "What's at the end of a train?" And someone will raise their hand and they'll say a caboose, and they all know that there's a caboose at the end of a train, even though they've never seen it in their lifetime. Not actually functional. And so it's part of our culture. I think cabooses are as much of American culture as Coca-Cola and Santa Claus. I think
you're right there. But it's the same over here, because the caboose, we fictionally, at the end of a train, we sort of talk it in the same fashion, you get your caboose going type thing, so get your bottom going. So
yeah. And, the caboose, honestly, is the reason that the year was chosen of our layout. Our layout set in 1975 because you expect to see a caboose on a train when you're a visitor. The general public expects that caboose. And so modern trains without that, and that just have the little light on the end, that doesn't do it for them. So we we typically run that 1975 caboose era.
Sure, sure. Okay. So we've talked about the layout. So how about we'll go back through and we'll just, can you see those photos on the screen okay?
Yeah.
So that's obviously an overview of a part of the layout. So which part are we looking at there?
Okay, you are actually higher and to the left of the front door. We have a little area in the corner where it's the break room for the volunteers, and that's where this photo was taken from. So you're up aerial. You're looking down at Lakeview, and right where that peninsula comes out of that curve is where one of our major sawmills are. Yeah, right there. Right there. That's a sawmill. So there's a lot of yard work that happens in this yard. Where trains come in, and we have a little engine house at the very end of the peninsula, probably hard to see in this photo. So there's some locomotives that always live in this yard. It's their job. And then we call that the teardrop, the big curve area. And I am sitting inside there right now.
Okay.
So if you, right in there, I'm sitting right inside there. That's our main control center. So just at the lower right hand of the photo, you can see like a piece of canvas down there. That's the edge of the handrail for the stairway that goes under the layout and comes back up in the teardrop. Okay. We call them duck unders. And so I'm sitting in the teardrop right now. And then you'll see off to the left in the photo where the people are over there, there's another teardrop. And that teardrop also has a stairway that goes down and up into it, but that's where we control our follow car systems.
Right. Okay.
So that is the motor pool teardrop, is what we call it.
Okay. I see. And obviously you got an observation area where all this signage and all that here is above there that the members of the public can go.
Yeah, that's our mezzanine. Sure. Yeah, and they can walk up and around and then back down into the backside. And staging is underneath that mezzanine. Okay. And then to the back of the mezzanine off the back wall is where we have our Coos Bay shipping yard. Sure. You can't see it from here because of the wall by the caboose back there. And that is 10583 in that picture. So.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yep. Full size caboose in here. So this photo is the Rocky Point burn, and it's a really cool feature that we have. We have a fire that goes off down to the lower left there. Oh, yeah. You push a button, and we have a volunteer who loves to program Arduinos, and he keeps working on the fires. Okay. Like every year, he's like, I made a new upgrade to the fire. So our fire is pretty amazing. And then we have a smoke system that uses liquid smoke from down underneath and pumps it up through the forest, and it rolls down the hill.
So this Trestle Bridge here, that was, I'm assuming, scratch built, purpose built for that part of the layout. So who built that?
Dave Tressel. Okay. He built the scenery. He loved bridges, which there were no bridges on the original OC&E, but there's 12 on this one.
Wow.
So there's a little bit of imagination in here. And you'll find that our mountains look a lot like the Colorado Rocky Mountains, specifically Glenwood Canyon. So you see the color of the rocks even in this photo. This is very I-70 corridor Glenwood Canyon rock. So, and Dave made all his own rock molds. So every mold here is unique.
Let's just blow that photo up a little bit if we can.
What you're looking at here is our little bit of steam. So our year is 1975, but people still want to see steam. So Dave built a little side branch called Sycan, and it's got an engine house and a turntable, and then it goes all the way around. It has its own track, goes all the way around a peninsula to the other side past Dog Lake, and services an old gold mine and a logging camp. There's a logging camp where the houses are on rail. And so there's a whole era there that he just decided is hidden away in the hills. And so you can see all of that.
So mainline trains are all diesel then? Is that what you're trying to, is that what it runs? Yep.
Correct. They're all 1975. Yeah. And they're all going to be Southern Pacific. Like if we're running actual OC&E specific, it's going to be Western Pacific and Southern Pacific.
Right. Okay. Well, that's the end of those photos.
And of course our OC&E. Yeah. We have some OC&E locomotives that Dave had custom built. So
that's the same scene, I think, just from the other side, is it?
Yep. So that's the turntable. Do you want to hear a funny story about this area?
I'd love to hear that.
So we have barn lights. I don't know if you can see them up over my head. Do you see our hanging barn lighting system? one of the volunteers was changing a light bulb one day, and
Uh-oh.
the light bulb fell.
Yeah.
And they're pretty big
Yeah.
bulbs, and it landed on that engine house and smashed it. So
Okay.
we brought out some like nondescript white vans and decided that the government showed up to cover up the alien landing that crushed the. So we wrote this huge article in our newsletter. Dave has a great sense of humor. So instead of saying, "Oh my God, we crushed the engine house," he made this great story about an alien landing and how the government covered
Area
it up.
56 in Colorado.
Yes, exactly. So we just have a lot of fun here when stuff like that happens.
Well, what can you do? If not, you got to cry, don't you?
Yeah. So we rebuilt the engine house, and
that's fantastic.
It was all good.
Okay, Lionel Trains, American institution by the sounds of it. So you've got a rather large collection there by the looks of it, and as one of your attractions, can you tell me something about some of these trains?
Well, I can tell you that those trains are the reason that this place exists. So Dave, being the newspaper publisher, he loved Lionel. He had a Lionel in his home always with his kids and everything. And despite the fact that he loved HO too, he always had a Lionel. But he liked to buy and sell Lionel. And so being a publisher, he had a publication called The Fence Post. And The Fence Post is an agriculture kind of, it basically goes from North Dakota to Texas in the middle of America, goes to all farming communities. So he would take out an ad in there because he could, and he'd say, "I'm going to be at this cafe in Oklahoma on this day," and he would draw like a little map of whatever state he was going to drive through, and he would say, I'll buy your Lionel." So people would bring him railroad stuff, and all the artifacts in this building come from his traveling days of just doing that, going out to America and finding stuff in old barns. He was the picker.
I was going to say he's like the penultimate American picker.
Yeah. So we have some crazy artifacts, some really cool stuff here that happened. But he did buy and sell Lionel. And honestly, he challenged himself to fund this building out of buying and selling Lionel his whole life, and he did it. So those are the things he decided to keep in that cabinet.
That's fantastic.
So some pretty rare stuff in there. We also have a binnacle, a ship's compass built by Lionel in 1943 during the war. That's what they did. So we have one of those. It's pretty cool.
So as we spoke about before we sort of came online, so to speak, it appears that, as we spoke about, I think the youth in any hobby is paramount for the longevity of the hobby, I should say. So you've got quite a number of programs here in regards to where are we?
Yeah, our youth programming.
Learning program. Sorry.
It's been an experience. It's been a learning experience for us working with kids. You know, there's not like some set program you buy and this is what you do with kids in model railroading. There's nothing like that. So what we did is, we're fortunate that 3 blocks down the street, our school district opened what's called the School of Innovation. And it's a K-8 school, and it's kind of a more open format. So we called them and said, "Hey, we'd like to do some model railroading." And they said, "We'd love to do some model railroading."
That's
so
awesome.
We taught an hour a day for 12 weeks. And we bought those big Woodland Scenic modules. The big stuff. And we built those with the kids. And then we put them all together at the end and ran them. And it worked so well that then we did it with Boys and Girls Clubs. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like after school programming here. And so we did that over the summer with those kids. And then we started doing T-Tracks last year. We do a lot of after school stuff. The School of Innovation, after we built layouts, we said, "What do you want to do next?" Well, they wanted to do Lego trains. So I applied for a grant from a local foundation, and we received $10,000 to buy Lego robotics kits.
That's awesome.
So, but the first thing we did was join the Lego First group, and we competed in the space.
Yeah.
It was a space theme that year. So we used our kits, and the kids built rockets and trains in space, and it was super fun. So we are just learning along with the kids as we go and trying new things all the time. And so I'm learning all the time.
I think it's quite interesting we're talking about the space theme, because I think it's the 5th of May over here right now, but it's May the 4th be with you if you're a Star Wars fan. So
it totally is May the 4th here. We do have a Star Wars day here at the museum too. It's super fun. I have so many Star Wars friends, and they come in costume.
I saw.
It's literacy.
Obviously,
day.
it's the next day because we got the May the 4th be with you, but then people put the 5th is when the return of the Empire come back, and all these memes have come up on my Facebook today saying along the lines of "Come and join the dark side. We all have masks" type thing for pointing at.
It's Return of the 5th.
That's right.
It? Or Revenge
of the
5th.
That's right. So.
Yeah. So our education programs are fun. We do stuff with scouts, and we do merit badges, all sorts of scout workshops. Now, when this COVID-19 crisis started, we had planned on doing some science this summer with kids, but we immediately took all of our ideas and put them together in one day and built curriculum that went home with people within 4 days. So we created kits for kids that we're at home now in the shelter in place, and we've been doing video on YouTube, me and my youth director, Misty, and we tie science into model railroading. We completed 7 lessons on energy, and now we're in paleontology. And do you know we have a piece of ballast that was cracked and has a fossilized plant in it?
Tell us about that.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And so we can talk about that. You never know where you're going to find a fossil. And then we talked about how plaster cloth is used in both protecting dinosaur bones and in modeling.
Well, that's exactly right. As I said, the place in Winton in Queensland, in my part of the world, we went to go through the shop when they actually go through, and that's exactly what they do. They do their archaeological dig, and then they extract these bones or fossils or whatever they got out there, and then they wrap it all in plaster for proper cleaning and cataloguing. So it's quite an interesting process.
Right. So our kids built, they took plaster, we sent plaster powder home in a bag, and they put water in it. And then we hide dinosaurs here. We're kind of known as the model train museum that you leave with the dinosaur. Because we play a nice spy game with kids, and if they can find 5 dinosaurs, they take a little plastic one home. So we put those little plastic ones into their plaster, and then they excavate it back out. They've told us they've had so much fun with it. So
that's a great idea. I might do that with my kids, actually.
That's stuff.
Fantastic.
You should. It's super fun because they can just kind of scratch it off, and really excavate it out with a paintbrush, and it's just fun. We're having so much fun with our youth programs. So
I can tell
kids are fun. As
I said, we don't have anything like this in Australia, not with the Model Railroad Museum anyway. So we've got kids groups and scout programs, but they don't. The merit badge side of things is not. They don't have a Model Railroad merit badge to my knowledge, but I think it's just an awesome idea to get kids involved in science and hobbies and craft and let their little minds go wild. I think it's fantastic.
Our next kit is engineering and structures, and we have 450 kids signed up for it. So
where are you going to put all them?
It's going to be busy. Well, it's home. It's
still
take home. So we make kits, and then our Boys and Girls Club delivers to their homes. Along with their food and stuff like that they take them. So we just partner up with agencies in our community, and it's been really fun.
That's phenomenal. Seriously. That's really, really lovely good work for all the guys and girls. That's for sure. So do you then, these kits, I'm interested, do you then have some sort of, you display them at some stage? Is that what you're planning on doing in the railroad?
Well, I don't know. This was all in response to COVID-19. So we're figuring it out. Now we're working on how do we do T-Track this summer virtually. Sure. And so we can do curbside delivery, and hopefully by midsummer we're open again. But we have the bases. We have the T-Track bases already with track on them for about 40 kids. And then we're working with some hobby stores to create kind of a menu for mom and dad, because a lot of our mom and dads are not modelers at all. And so if they had a menu where they could call up and say, I want this house out of these 5 choices, and I want this car and this tree and these, I want dogs or horses or whatever, then they would have that ready, and they don't have to go through a website, which is overwhelming for mom to try to figure out what to order. And then we're building an N-scale layout for our T-Track where the kids, it's going to be kind of a long layout that will go along our east wall. And it's one where we'll have a module in there, but anytime a kid brings in a T-Track, we can pop that out and pop their T-Track in and run trains across.
So like Fremo, American Fremo. Yeah.
Like Fremo. But we're thinking that way if kids build it at home, they can at least come in and run it. Yeah. Even if, because we can't gather them to build together right now, but we're figuring it out.
I'm in awe.
It's been a process for sure.
That's fantastic. It really is. I'm glad we talked about the kid side of things, because that was something that sort of resonated as soon as I went into your website. Of you just see their little faces. It's just warms your heart as a parent.
I know all the kids in those pictures.
Sorry?
The kids in those pictures. I know all the kids in those pictures. They're all in our programs. So
that'll be me. I'll just be like standing a little bit higher above because at 6'2", but I'll have the same look on my face. So and pointing, going, look at that, look at this,
look
at that.
Do it.
All right, so the volunteer program is. I first emailed you quite a number of months ago. You might not remember because you probably get a lot of emails from random people. We are planning a trip in September that probably won't happen now. However, we will be coming at some stage, just a matter of when. What interests me is it's this prototypical model railway that I can come along and do a course with some of your people to run it. That interests me a lot. So tell us about that. I think
the real basis of this, so the basis of how this functions so well is that we're not a club.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
We're made up of volunteers from many clubs. We have volunteers from Cheyenne to New Mexico here. They're all in their own model railroad clubs, and that's great. But when you come here, you're a volunteer for the Colorado Model Railroad Museum, and our mission is to use model railroading to educate, inspire, and bring joy to all ages. So you filter everything you do in this building through that mission statement of bringing joy to people. And so operating here is quite different than on a club. And volunteers, you still have total fun, but you also have to engage with the public. Yeah. And so it's a different kind of experience. But it also makes it a real level and even ground for everyone that comes through the door to volunteer.
Well, I've got
so we have a training program.
I know. I'll click on some of these documents. Now, I've got my in-plane reading sorted out, that's for sure. So there's who wrote these documents?
It's complicated. Randy Palmer and Dave Tressel and some of the managers actually. So to run a place like this with a staff of 5 ladies that don't touch the railroad except me, it's been an experience. So what we did is we created management teams. And so we have about 50 to 75 active volunteers at any given time. And active means you come once every month or so at a minimum. And so we divided into locomotive team, maintenance team, rolling stock team, electrical team, scenery, so all the different topics have a team of volunteers focused on it. So we get together and we write these things up. So I can't read that one, so I'm not sure which one you're looking at, but this is our training program. We have 138 signals you need to learn. So we have specific radio signals.
So what do I need to read before I come over? Because I'm not going to be able to read it.
Well, you know what? We also have a checklist. So the point is that when you come to start volunteering here, you're going to do 2 runs as a conductor, one each direction, just to understand the railroad and the signaling and where the train's going. Because when it enters this tunnel, you can't see it from here. You got to go somewhere else, kind of thing. And then the next 2 times, you're the engineer, and someone's with you, so you're comfortable. And during that time, we go through a whole checklist so you can learn all about the layout.
So there's the signaling there.
Signal system.
That's given me a great idea for my railway, that's for sure.
So I don't know if you can hear the dinging. A train is going through Gear 8 now. I have the docent running, so I do have trains running. I just have everything muted, so it's quiet. And that was something we had to do so that I can run the building by myself, because sometimes I'll have a group that wants to come in, like a senior group wants to come on a Tuesday morning. Well, a lot of our volunteers still work.
Right, okay.
So I need to be able to run the railroad, and in an emergency, or like today, I run it by myself. And so we built this docent program, which is great. And understanding it helps you understand all of the documents that you're looking at. What you're also looking at is what each train does. So a lot of those are the train orders for specific trains. So if there's the log train is...
I'll bring up the log turn.
The log turn is, that's a job. And that one is an all day. You're going to spend 6 hours on that probably, because you have to, it's up at our mountain. There's a place where you have to be on and off the main so quickly because trains are going through. But it's just, and if you don't have a good dispatcher, he can really back it up there. And then somebody has to back up literally. And so, yeah,
The cornfield
log
meat,
train
as they
really
say.
throws it throws a little bit of random chaos into our day when somebody's running that one.
Sure. Perhaps I won't do that one.
We also have a hotbox detector that we can turn on to randomly throw, but we typically don't because it does hold up.
Oh, okay. So what does that do, sorry?
It's the Hotbox
Right.
Detector. It's a product made by a Colorado company that was actually tested here years ago. So when the train goes over it, it's exactly like the Union Pacific's Hotbox outside. They even came back a few years ago and made it a woman's voice instead of a man's voice so that it was more realistic. I guess guys listen to women better.
Rightfully so as well. All right. So...
Yep. And so we have a lot of yards too. You'll see yard instructions in there too. Do you hear some chickens? I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but our livestock train is going through this room right now.
So have you got a decoder in the actual wagon, do you? In it?
We do. Those are Broadway Limited cars, and we have cows and chickens and pigs. We have a volunteer who keeps donating them to us. So the public loves this train because it's so loud, and I cannot mute the cars. I've muted the locomotive, but I can't mute the cars.
Okay. Wow, it's got some nice ambient noise in the background.
Yeah. So inside this teardrop is where one of the tunnels is. Basically, it goes through the inside here.
So, when the railway is being run, so to speak, obviously, so how often is the museum open for? What are the opening hours? So if it's 8 hours a day, you surely wouldn't get through all these trains in 8 hours. Is that how it works?
No, we don't. We're open for sex. We're open 10 to 4 right now, and we were planning on starting this summer by going 10 to 5.
Okay.
And adding more days of the week.
Sure.
Greeley is not a hot spot for tourism.
Will be for me.
In the wintertime, I'm working on it. I'm trying really hard to make Greeley a hot spot for tourism. But in the wintertime, we only run Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because there's not visitorship enough to cover overhead during the week. In the summertime, we're open Wednesday through Sunday, and Monday is maintenance. But we're thinking of being open half-day Mondays this year even, just in case you're in town and you couldn't make it over the weekend. So you still have an opportunity to come in.
I did see something about if the museum's shut to knock on the door, and there may be someone in there that can show you around. Is that?
If there's a car outside, knock on the door. Do you know how so many people will call, or they'll call the chamber, or they'll show up at our Chamber of Commerce, our visitor center for the city, and they'll be like, "We're in town to see the train museum, and it's closed." And so they'll call my cell phone, "Michelle, can you go to the museum real quick? These people are from Australia," and so I'll drive down and let them in.
Wow!
I've done it for Australians a couple of times actually.
I'm hoping they looked after you and bought you a coffee or a drink or a meal afterwards. So.
I have the last ones actually gave me a kangaroo instead of a koala bear, the clippy.
Oh, yeah, little clippy thing.
Yeah, he's really cute. Yeah, so I've got a few of those in my office. I love them.
Kangaroos can, depending on where you are, in my part of the world, they're a bit of a pest. You might think they're cute and cuddly, but they can be destructive.
But then they're not.
Yeah.
It's like our prairie dog. Do you know what a prairie dog is?
Well, it's a bit like our dingoes, I think.
Yeah. You'll see them. Yeah, dingoes would eat our prairie dogs. Okay. That'd be good. But
they are our coat of arms, so kangaroos, that is. Okay.
So if you are in this region and we're not open,
please
just
knock on the door.
Call us or knock on if my car is out there or somebody's car out there, knock on the door. We're gonna let you in. We might not run trains for you, but we'll definitely let you look around.
That's awesome. I want to run trains, so I'll be definitely coming there when the trains are running. So.
Okay. Oh, and back to the volunteer thing. Anybody can volunteer. And how we do it is we send out an email on Monday called the Crew Caller, the CMRM Crew Caller. You receive that email every Monday once you're signed up as a volunteer. And you reply if you want to come on the weekend. You tell us what day you're coming. If you can't come, then you just ignore it. So we've never had a day without volunteers.
I can see why. Well, who wouldn't want to run this railway?
But so we don't charge for you to volunteer other than we ask you to buy your first shirt yourself. And that's your investment in us. And then you can run our trains and be a volunteer here. And we're happy to have you.
Do you have little hat badges?
The pins, like little, we do.
That was what my daughter asked her to ask you. So 'Cause that's what she collects.
Okay, we'll get her
That's
one.
what she collects.
Oh, good.
She also said I need
I'll
to
even
make
give
sure
her
that I
some of
ask
the
good
old
questions, and the Swatties.
That's a really good question.
She's all about the hat pin or the lapel pin. So
She should see my apron. I collect them too when I go places, and I'll get one everywhere I go. So I have this apron that I wear for Operation Lifesaver that has more like railroads all over it.
All right.
So I understand.
How about a deal?
That.
I'll bring some from some Australian railways across when we come and visit. So we'll do that.
That sounds great. I would like that, and I'll trade you for some local Colorado stuff.
Okay, so we briefly spoke about the computer program that runs this vast railway. Can we start going through that a little bit?
We can. So when you come in to volunteer on a Friday or Saturday, we're dispatching. We actually have a dispatcher, and you're going to have a headset, and you're running, so you're in full operations. But on Sundays and nights like tonight, we have what we call our docent operation, and it is computer. And so I'm actually sitting here at the desk. So I'm going to turn the camera around. Does that work?
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay.
I will scale your camera.
Okay. And in fact, I'm going to roll my little chair back so you can kind of see the whole desk, and then I'll roll back forward and maybe it's a bumpy chair. Okay, so this is our main operations desk here. And for me to run trains, the very first thing I have to do in this teardrop is go over here to our light panel and turn the layout on and some of the overhead lights. So that's kind of our big control panel of all things electronic. And then we come over here to the computer, and I pick the right one from a sign Randy Palmer leaves me, and then log in, and this is our computer program. And so I chose the trains that I wanted it to run out of the Pine Creek yard, which is a yard dedicated to computer trains. And it has them out on the layout. And so I don't know if you can see this. I'll try to point with my hand. But basically, green is the path where the train is going. It is this little line here.
Okay.
Red is, actually, I've told you that backwards. Green is behind it. This is going this way. Yeah, so it's going in a siding. And then up here, I don't know if you can see this. This is really the control. You don't want your trains to just stop. So these trains are constantly listening for their speed that they're supposed to have. So I don't know if you can read it, but like the coal train, he's approved for 72. He's going 72.
Right.
And so this is how you make them look realistic for speeding up and slowing down.
Sure.
Over here, I have my booster status, so I'm sure that everything is good to go.
Yeah.
It'll tell me if there's a problem. And right now, the red line over here is telling me I have them all on mute.
Right.
And I do have buttons we added that later. Can we mute the locomotives? They're so loud when I'm trying to talk to a group, So this is kind of an overall.
So a volunteer wrote that software. Is that what you?
Wow. He did it in Visual Basic. So this is a one-of-a-kind software just for this layout.
So how many detected blocks are on that railway?
18.
Only 18. Wow. Okay, so because you run quite long trains, I think,
right.
Don't you? So up to 100 cars?
We do. So typically 100 cars, if not more. We ran a 283-car extreme train one time with 11 locomotives.
11 locomotives.
But we could hold the world's longest train on this layout. The single track main line is long enough. It just has a mountain in the middle, so we haven't done it yet, but we could.
Can I be involved with that?
Sure.
I want to do that. Okay.
So we're hoping to do that someday, maybe.
So it's just the one screen for the whole railway? Is that what obviously it's schematically?
That is one screen for the whole railway. So down here we have the new Pine Creek yard, which is not our main staging. It's on the main staging is down here on the wall behind it. You can see it says Chiloquin Yards, Fairport Yards. So new Pine Creek we built it later. It came 3 years after the other layout, the other one. Okay. So what's happening is this one's going this way, this one's going this way, and then they're coming out into their. And so it's meant to look like railroad software. Yeah, like their schematics. So we have our sightings all on here. So the computer knows how long these are because it's been programmed into them. But when we're operating, you have to tell the dispatcher how long your train is.
Oh, I see.
Because of the sightings.
Okay.
So I have the ability to stop all trains, to park them on the layout, or to have them park in staging.
Right. Okay.
So
I run a similar program, but it wasn't written by myself. It's a German program called Train Controller, which is very similar to this by the looks of it. You can set up what they call scheduling. So it's not schedule with time, it's schedule of location to send a train to a particular location. Goes a little bit probably further because obviously your dispatcher has to give clearances to trains. Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. When we run full operations, he's controlling every switch on the layout. So when we're running docent, Randy simplified it especially for me when I'm running it, so that basically your eastbound trains are going to run on the main and your westbounds are going to run on the sidings, or alternating at different sidings, just depending. And so he's kind of built that into the program just to help it run smoother. So, yeah. Do you have any other questions about it? Hopefully I can answer them. I wish Randy was here because he would give you all the technical terms of
So he controls the individual turnouts and the signal aspects as well via that one program? Yep.
Yes. He basically takes over the CTC machine with this program.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He takes the place of the CTC machine. And so he is throwing the switches and everything with this program. And so when I start up the general computer, I have to choose CTC, docent mode, or play mode. And play mode is when you flip the switches yourself.
Right. Okay.
Like you got to go out there and manually flip all your switches. Okay. So
is that also the main line switches, or is that just the siding?
Every switch. Okay. Yeah. But then we have a few places where we have computerized switches if you want to use them, which I do all the time when I'm operating. Like I push the button and it changes the next 4 for me when I'm going into a yard. There's a few places like that, but you don't have to. You could manually do them.
So I'll just bring up the picture of the CTC now. So so that's the picture there. So is that actually a real CTC console, or someone's just replicated it or prototyped it?
It's half. All of the switches and the green metal at the lower half are all from a CTC machine. Wow. The top where it's darker black, we had that custom made because that's our railroad. So that's a glass piece across the top with ours. What he's doing is moving the magnet for each train. Yeah. We kind of teal. We have little magnets that we move around so he can tell where they're going. And then of course his switches are lined up underneath where the trains are at. So yeah, that's how we do it. That's our dispatching office.
That's awesome. I don't know where to look.
It's pretty fun. Now, something that they did that's really cool, even though this is, wireless and digital, it sounds like 1975. So they actually went and recorded a CTC machine with all of its relays tripping. So, and we put the time delay in just to annoy our dispatchers. So if you've got a lot of switches that you're hitting, you're going to wait 9 seconds.
Right.
So before you can hit the next one. And sometimes we get complaints about that.
But, well.
It keeps it real.
That's right. You did say it's a prototypical railway. So.
Right. So, yeah. Do you want to see some of it? Or
I certainly do want to see a virtual tour, but that is the end of episode number 1. In episode number 2, Michelle will show us around this lovely layout at the Colorado Model Railroad Museum. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Techniques.